Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Making Change podcast. Almost forgot the name of the podcast because Lisa's not here to do her intro, which she always does. Lisa Mazzanetto is not going to be recording with us today, but I have a couple of other guests that I will introduce in just a moment. I'm Kathy Godfrey, and I have really no way of describing myself. So I always say something silly, like I don't have any certifications and licenses, and I don't have any specialties. Like I really am just this person who found herself at a point in life where I was like, what the hell is going on? And why does this not seem like the thing that it should be? It was a very vague feeling that my life wasn't what it could be. And I'd done all the things, all the achieving, all the relationships, all the studying, all the spiritual studying, just all the things. So I really am just someone who works with people who also find themselves in that situation. I have folks who feel like they've done all the things they've been told to do and taught to do, and life still just doesn't feel the way it seems like it could. Again, a very vague feeling. So those are the people that I work with, if you could call that in a practice. I don't, as in I don't have a practice. I just am in practice with others who want to find their way to the freedom and joy that found me, is how I usually say it, because I certainly can't take any credit for that. So my two guests that I have with me today are two people that I know because they are two such people who found themselves in that place in life, and our paths crossed, and I'll let them say whatever they want to about that. I will say before I introduce them, again, as usual, I don't have an agenda for this talk, so we will just be letting the conversation go wherever it goes. And of course, I think I've been forgetting to say this, but if you're listening to us and you have questions or topics that you would like to talk about, or that you would like for us to talk about, please leave those in the comments, or you can email either Lisa Mazzanetto or myself, Kathy Godfrey, at the emails provided on my YouTube channel. So first, I want to introduce, brand new to the podcast recording with us today, is Mileena. And Mileena, welcome to Making Change, and you're welcome to say anything you would like to about yourself and why you're here this morning.
Well, I am very excited to be here.
Yay! Excited for you to be here.
I guess what brought me on this path, I guess you could say, I was so scared of being myself, and I didn't want to live life like that, of who I thought I was. And I had tried absolutely everything, from getting super fucked up and, running around with other people and therapy and all the things. And I just couldn't find anything that helped me be okay with being me until I got here. And everything that I thought about myself just kind of melted away once me and Kathy started working together, and it fucking revolutionized my life, to say the very least about it.
Yay! Yay! That is so exciting, and I'm thrilled for you to be here, and I can't wait for folks to hear more about your life as it is now, and what your expectations were maybe, and how those turned out. So we'll explore those however it turns out that we do. Also with us this morning is Ava. Most of you feel like an old friend by now, probably, as you've listened to her on the couple of previous podcasts. But good morning, Ava. I'm glad you're back. And anything you want to say to folks?
I'm super excited to be here, and I'm really excited that Mileena is also here. I think I've mentioned Mileena in a couple of the previous podcasts, not by name, but just like someone who also started on this path the same time I did, and I talk to a lot. Mm-hmm. So I'm just really excited that all of us are here together.
Ah, me too. Me too. And I really don't know where things are going to start. Maybe I just want to say, and this may take us down our first little rabbit hole. I just want to say that finding a place, or having the place of freedom and joy find me, meant that it also was going to continue to share itself in people that I cross paths with. And that happens all the time, whether it's somebody I just randomly meet downtown, or, you know, somebody who's making my coffee, my own daughter, you guys, you know, whoever it is. And I didn't have a plan for that. It just started happening on its own. And I am thrilled for so many reasons about Mileena and Ava. But for one reason is that I know that they now are in very different spheres than I am, and that is also happening for them. So the miraculous changes that have occurred in your lives, I know are just rippling out, because I have the very grand notion that it's so easy, it would be so easy to change this world. Like it is not a difficult idea. It's just a matter of us finding this place and being in it. Like we don't even have to go out and evangelize, but just being in life as this affects every single person around us. So maybe I want to start with, I'm thinking about now how very different that is from the life that I used to live, which anybody who's listened to this or worked with me, you have a pretty good idea of how crazy I was. So I won't go into that. But maybe since this is Mileena's first time here, Mileena, maybe you would like to talk a little bit about what your life looked and felt like, and then anything that you want to say about how that's different today, and can be as general or specific as you would like to be.
Oh man. My life back then, which feels like a million years ago, is radically different than what it is today. And not so much that like I have more things or I'm in a different place, state, whatever. It's just like who I see myself as is radically different. Way back when.
How long was it, Mileena? Do you know how long we've been talking? Just to give folks an idea of like how this process moves.
I mean, I've known you for over a year, but we started like just one-on-one back in March, I believe, of 2019.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay. So like maybe this is the 10th month. Yeah.
Yeah, something along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
But before me and Kathy started working together one-on-one, I, to put it lightly, hated myself. I hated everything that I was. I hated the way I looked. I hated the way I interacted with people. I hated every single relationship that I was a part of because I thought I was bad or not worthy or, you know, something along those lines. And the way I felt about myself was very transparent in my behaviors as far as destruction and chaos and just the despair that followed me around, because that's how I saw myself, was just this desperate person that wasn't worth anything to anybody, especially not myself.
Mm-hmm. What kinds of, sorry to interrupt you,
Yeah.
So remember where you were, but can you give people an idea of like what kinds of behaviors came out of that, seeing yourself that way?
Absolutely. Well, I don't really know how to say this without being for lack of a better term, I was an absolute junkie. I ran around and destroyed my life as far as like using drugs all the time, as much as I could to escape myself. I would sleep with a bunch of people that I hadn't talked to for more than 20 minutes, or, you know, would revisit old relationships and whatever. I'd lash out in relationships. Like I couldn't connect with anybody on a real level.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it was a torturing existence.
Right. And I, as you know, all of you who know anything about me know, I just super destructive behavior for me as well. And some of the more common things that I think people might recognize, like they might say, well, I'm not using drugs, I'm not having a lot of crazy sex, I'm not doing other behaviors that we might have done, but there are some more daily behaviors that happen when we see ourselves that way. For example, like we can't ever be honest. We're just lying all the time, all the while being very prideful about being honest. But when we feel horrible about who we think we are, there's no way for us to let people see that. And so we'll do whatever it takes. And that means sometimes for me being like super violent, or just, cutting people down to the point that they wouldn't come back. That was my MO, was just like, if I hurt you enough, I won't have to deal with you anymore. A lot of those kinds of behaviors. So I just am encouraging people who are listening, like, not to immediately brush aside if you haven't done some of the crazier things that we've done. Just think about, what are you doing in your daily life that might be signs or behaviors that you're seeing yourself from a really confused place. So Ava, anything that, I know you've talked about that on the previous podcast, but anything that coming to you right now you want to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it loops back into the last one that we recorded, where I talked about how I had like long-term sobriety for a while and how that wasn't any more sustainable than the really crazy shit I was doing, because I didn't change the way that I felt. So I was always going to go off the rails, or I was always terrified that I was going to go off the rails. And so there is no other option than to actually do it. If that's what you think about all the time, like, you're going to lose your shit. Mine definitely shows up more in like anxiety, or just really putting myself down all the time, being very, very desperate for people to like me, and thinking that I could never actually reach that, but like bending over backwards all the time in situations that it was not necessary. Like, people were very kind to me and I was still like groveling. So that is definitely one of the things that showed up a lot, even when I wasn't drinking or doing coke in bathrooms, or those kind of things, those fun
those things, you'll have that.
Normal shit.
Right. Yeah, I love that you bring that up. That's probably the biggest sign that we feel that we're not worthy, is when we're just constantly groveling, as you say. We need everybody to like us, so if the UPS guy doesn't say hello back when you say hello, it's just the end for several days. What did you do? What did he see that he didn't like? What was wrong with you that day? It's it can get super crazy making about really small things. So we may come back to some of that as our conversation progresses, but now, Mileena, I want to come back to, like, okay, that's what your life did look like. Of course, that resulted in all the things, right? Money issues, job issues, relationship issues, body issues, all the issues. And so what changed, and what's your life like now?
Well, the easiest way to put it is how I saw myself change. Like, it wasn't, I was telling myself this lie for a really long time, that I was worthless, that I was bad, that I was selfish, all the things. And through working in the work that me and you did together, it broke down all those lies to, I didn't really have any evidence for anything that I was telling myself. And once I stopped looking at like past behavior as evidence and was just looking right here and right now, there wasn't anything that I could find to support that. So, like, I'm sure you've mentioned a million times by now, my belief in Santa Claus went away as easy as my belief that I was bad went away. It's just not possible that I am in this present moment right now.
So delightful. Yes, I love saying that you don't have to struggle to not believe in Santa every day. So there's no reason for you to struggle to not believe in your old self-definition every day. I love also that you bring up, we very commonly use past behavior as the evidence of our self-judgment, but when we understand that that behavior itself was caused by how we were defining ourselves, then you see how that just becomes this weird definition loop. If it's like, I feel shitty about myself, so I'm gonna, have crazy sex with inappropriate people. And then I look back and go, look, see, that proves that there's something really wrong with me. I have crazy sex with inappropriate people. But that's not at all what that means. It simply means that I saw myself as not meaning anything to anyone. And so it didn't matter what happened to me. That's not proof of what I am. It's only proof of what I thought, right? Only proof of what I thought. And so that's why what Mileena is mentioning is like, it's as easy to no longer believe that old definition as it is to no longer believe there's a Santa. I hope no children are listening. If you want your child to believe in Santa, well,
We've ruined it.
we did. Ava, you want to say anything about that, about how self-belief changes?
I think that like the most immediate thing that I noticed was how much easier it was to like exist with other people, as someone who really like took all my worth from other people. Once I started seeing myself in a different way, I was able to see them in a different way. And especially if you have like a background of trauma and you've used sort of the things that have happened to you as an evidence or an excuse or whatever of why you are the way that you are, like that all just went away. I was like, these are things I don't believe about myself, so they cannot be true about another person. Like they're doing the same shit I'm doing, it's just coming out differently.
Yes, I love that so much. I asked somebody the other day, another client of mine, like why is it important for the way you see yourself to change? Why is that important for the world? And she just talked really beautifully about, well, because then you're just existing in this state of freedom, and in that freedom there's no reason to not love.
Mm.
And so can you imagine, like, just thinking back over the last few days in this country, like if even a tiny percentage of us knew that there's no reason to not love, how very different the last few days would have looked. Yeah, and you know, that reminds me, maybe this will be our first little rabbit hole, so heads up to you two that let's talk about this whole love thing. You know, like what does that have to do with any of this? Because as you all know, that was certainly the thing that I was chasing, and I have discovered over the years that that's true for everybody that I worked with. And when I heard our president, I try to say that without air quotes, but you know, our president made that video recording of speaking to the folks who were trashing the Capitol. And I was so struck by the fact that he said, "We love you, you are special." Because I know that the people who are at that Capitol and who have been following him, and this is true for him as well, that all they want is to feel loved and special. And I just sat there for the longest time just feeling like how happy I would be if they could just know that that's just there available for them right where they are. And what a difference that would make. I 100% see that accounts for our president's behavior and for his ability to appeal to people who are also feeling really desperate about that. So whichever one of you wants to run with that whole thing about love and desperation and all that, have at it.
Mileena and I, we got on FaceTime before we met up for this podcast, and we were talking about this exactly.
Oh, nice.
Because I live just outside of DC, and so I don't know, that means I guess I'm supposed to care more.
Well, you feel closer to it, we maybe could say.
Yeah, and I was like, I don't live in that neighborhood. I don't know what's happening. But just that I don't have any like anger for the people who have done the thing that they've done, that have stormed the Capitol, whatever, vandalized it, because they very much believe that they're doing something important, and like outside of that, like my opinion doesn't matter. Like, right. It doesn't matter at all. They really believe that they're saving the world, and you know, I definitely wish that they knew that there was an option where they don't, like, you can do that in your house.
Yeah.
You can hang out. You can start with your family. You can start with yourself. Like, you don't have to travel and like get arrested or, you know, some people died.
Right.
But I think that shows up in a lot of ways in various communities. And then this is just one like particularly loud, particularly kind of violent way that it's shown up. But yeah, I mean, you don't do something like that without being in a vast amount of pain, regardless of if your personal view is if that pain is real, because it's real to them. So it doesn't matter.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so many times in my life, people would say, I don't understand why you're acting this way. Like, you know, you're good. You got this, you're that, people think this about you. Like, why can't you just get your shit together? Why do you keep essentially storming the capital of my life every day of my life? It felt like. So I certainly related to that level of fear and panic and desperation to matter. And like you said, I don't doubt at all that every single one of them, and even the president himself, believe that they are doing something important. What their personal idea is about what that is and why it's important is for sure unique to their own journey, even though they look like they're agreeing on something. Like, that's another interesting thing that changes from this perspective, is that they might all look like they're seeing one thing the same way, but they and their journey is as much a unique and singular expression of life as anyone and anything else. Yeah. So, Mileena, what did you want to say about that whole situation, or about desperation for love and value in general?
I mean, I like what both of you had to say about it, that it was just this really loud example of how fear and the fear of not being worthy enough to be loved by someone, or loved or cared for by the government, or to have people listen to you, was just, it exploded in this kind of fashion.
Yeah.
And I think everybody can kind of identify with that feeling on some personal level, even if you weren't personally there storming the actual Capitol. Like, we all have had that feeling of, I will do anything to get you to love me, or to get something to prove to me that I am worth being loved, because I don't believe that. And I need you, or I need this system or the president to tell me and to prove to me that I am worth enough to fight for and to be loved, or to be worthy.
Yes, that's another thing that he was telling them, is that, and he has been telling them, that I will fight for you. And it's so interesting. Well, I'm going to ask this instead of tell it, because you both have brilliant things to say about this. Like, why, or do you need, from this perspective that we're talking about, do you need people to validate or fight for you, and why or why not?
Absolutely not.
Why is that?
Well, I think that me wanting someone else to validate my existence is taking away the power of my own worth. And it's kind of proving to myself that I don't feel worthy enough to be able to give that to myself. So if anything, it's a great opportunity to realize that I'm still looking for that worthiness in myself, other than like needing somebody else to tell me, like, you know, I love you more than anything in the world, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you, or whatever cheesy rom-com shit we're talking about.
Right.
I don't think any of that is necessary to feel incredibly whole. I think it comes from, you know, where you see yourself.
I was going to say, where does that wholeness come from? What is that?
It comes from believing that you were born with an inherent worth, that you, like all the old stories that I was telling about myself, were not true, and I am absolute worthy of love because I am love. Like, that's the only thing that I am, if anything.
Right. I love that you said, if anything. If I'm anything, I'm that, but am I anything? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Ava, you want to say anything about, I had a thought there, no words are going to come to express it, but go ahead, whatever you want to say, it might come back to me.
I mean, so I think the moments of just like unbelievable wholeness and understanding that I've had with you, and I'm not at this point in my journey and path. I wish there was a third word because I'm really tired of using those two.
I know. and they're not really very accurate. They're just
No.
like, I know.
You know, it's not all the time, but I do have these moments where I'm just like, holy shit, 100% like clear, in love, just with like just the concept of my own breathing, like the most beautiful thing in the whole world. Most of those times I've been alone. Like I've just been in my house, or, you know, on the porch, or hanging out with my dog or something. Like it was not based on another person telling me something. And on the flip side of that, the moments where I'm not seeing very clearly, in the beginning, I had a habit of like reaching out to the people that I had been reaching out to, like friends or, you know, my parents or whatever. And then realizing that like what they were telling me was helpful, but wasn't what I was looking for. I was like, oh, right. Oh, no. I see from a different place now. This is not what I'm looking for. And so it was just this knowledge that it all comes from within me rather than anything that anybody else can do, which I think is also great for the people in my life, that it takes a lot of pressure off of them to try to, quote unquote, put me in a better mood. Because I'm not worried about, like, even in my shittiest moods, I'm over here like, nope, it'll be fine. I'll figure it out. You know, it's going to be fine.
Yes, I love that. It's like, I know what this is.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the biggest comfort in this place, is that even if you see from your old perspective for a moment and you say, or think something, you know, confused, I'll call it that, something confused about yourself that feels terrible, from this place, it's exactly like you say, Ava. It's just like, you know what that is. And in our old way of seeing, we didn't know that. We thought that our lostness, our pain, our fear could literally last forever.
Mm-hmm.
And I think lots of folks at the Capitol this week have arrived at that place in their lives, that their pain and fear and feeling betrayed and rejected and abandoned, that feeling is, they think, all they remember. That's what I thought. And because it was all I remembered, I thought it was all that was going to be. And that is a terrifying place to be, for sure.
Yeah. I also think it's very interesting just about the word remember, that I was trying to think about something yesterday. I don't even remember what. There we go. And I was like, oh, I don't remember that at all. And not like in a, like, I know it happened. I could say the things that happened, but like, it's not so like surrounding me all the time, this story of my past or the things that have happened or whatever, which makes it so heavy and so like, it just increases the desperation to get out of it. And instead I was trying to remember something yesterday and was like, well, guess it didn't matter. And then like kept doing something else.
Right, exactly. How is that for you, Mileena, remembering in the past and history and all that?
I mean, I kind of feel like the bubble of my past is somewhere way over there and I can't reach it. And I don't want to go looking for it either. Like, it's just, I am what I am right now, and everything that's happened to me up until this point is kind of inconsequential, like, to who I am and what I offer, I guess, to the present moment.
Yeah, and there's a really good reason for that. And I'll invite all of you to take a look at, how would it be possible for a story that you have about your past? And I'm not even asking you to make the crazy sounding leap that it's not real. we may get to that eventually, but right now I'm not asking you to consider that. Even like, let's say it was real and you lived it. And that, by that, I mean, let's say that the past is a real place, you know, that what you have lived is actually somewhere back there somewhere. Even if that's true, why do we just assume that it has some power in this present moment? Like, what power could that possibly be? And my silly little example that I use with people a lot is like, you know, if I could beam you to a brand new planet full of people and other interesting beings, would you like pop into their existence and start telling your same old story as soon as you met one of them? Would you be like, hey, I'm Kathy, I'm from Earth. Man, I have had a fucked up life. Let me tell you, like I've been real crazy. Like even now, would I tell that whole long story to say, and here I am now free and joyful? No, I would not. But I invite you to look and see if you would, if you think that that would somehow validate your present moment existence. Like that's really what we're trying to do when we keep telling that story over and over, even the one that got us to a good place. So just inviting people to take a look at that. How do you know there's any power in the past to affect your present moment? Very definitely worth checking out. I'm thinking now that it would be really fun for a few minutes to just ask you guys questions that I typically hear or see people trying to get answers to outside of themselves. Like I think advice columns are really funny to me because the question and the answer are coming from the same perspective. And so as somebody said, we always say it's Einstein, but I don't think it was him in actuality, but you can't solve a problem that comes from the same way of seeing. Basically, you can't use the same perspective to solve the perspective because it's just going to loop. It's just going to see itself the same way. So I thought it would be fun here for a few minutes if I just ask some of those kinds of questions and let you guys jump in and say what you would say if you were the advice columnist from this perspective where you are.
Paper.
Yeah. Let's see what you would say. And so here's one that I hear talked about a lot. Considering my past, how can I feel safe to be vulnerable to other people in my life? How can I feel safe to be vulnerable to other people in my life? So maybe starting with vulnerable, what does that really mean? And what would you say to this person about that?
I remember having this conversation with you a couple months ago, the first time we talked about vulnerability. And I was like, it was one of my, God damn it, Kathy moments where you said something and I was just like, what are you, what? Because I had been taught that vulnerability is, you know, putting yourself in a place where other people can hurt you and then just kind of being okay with that. And I was like, well, that seems fucking stupid. I don't want to do that shit.
Right.
But I was doing it all the time. Like I would show up and be like, here are the 10 worst things about me. Do you want to be friends?
Right.
I thought that I could like put a buffer in between anything they could actually do to hurt me. Like I thought if I just brought on my worst shit, then they could be like, that shit sucks. And I'd be like, I brought it. And Kathy was like, what if vulnerability is being in a place where nobody actually can hurt you? That you show up as you are all the time with the absolute knowledge that everyone around you is seeing from however they're seeing, and it has nothing to do with you. It has absolutely no value on you. And you said that and I just was like, what? That's crazy. Which is funny to me now because that's, you know, how I see most of the time. Right. But I also think like, that's one of the things that kept me lying for so long, even though I would like show up with this like false you know, here's all my worst things, I would also be like, and here's a whole web of lies that I have spun, so you think I'm a normal person.
Right. Yes.
And most of the I mean, not that I'm meeting anybody new these days in the pandemic time, but like the people that I know, I just don't like, I don't have that weird buffer between them of I don't deserve to breathe air, and also here's a bunch of lies about great stuff I'm doing.
Mhm.
I'm vibing. I'm just hanging out.
I love that that's how it works. It totally worked that way for me too. It's like I'm gonna lead with all the terrible things, hoping that they admire that I'm even here. But
Mhm.
then I'm gonna very quickly shift gears into like, and this is how wonderful I am now. And not believing one word of that, of course. Just making shit up on the fly. You know, depending on how I thought they saw me, that would determine the story that I was spinning to them that particular day. That even controlled how I wanted my appearance, my physical appearance to be for them, was always about that, supporting my fairy tale that came along with the worst things about me to make up for the worst things about me, really is what I was doing. Yeah. Yep. How about you, Mileena?
I was just trying to think. I don't think I had the balls to tell everybody all my shit. I think I just split the lies.
Right.
Like nobody gets to know anything about me.
Yeah.
I think like when we talk about vulnerability, I think of like intimacy and having my innermost known, and that's the most, you know, intimate thing that you can do with another person.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody can judge me because they're only seeing themselves in my actions. And they're seeing it from whatever perspective they're seeing it from. So I have nothing to worry about in getting hurt.
Beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, that's how I see it. That's the best way I can put that.
It's so simple, isn't it? It's so utterly simple, like what both of you said. And I invite those of you out there who think this sounds too good to be true to try it. Because again, as I say every week, this is not about me sharing an opinion that I have about Ava or Mileena or myself or the capital or what. It's not an opinion. What I'm saying is not an opinion. It's a perfectly observable way of being, a truth that anyone can see. Like if you just look a little bit, like you will start to see it. It's like starting to recognize where those gifts under the tree actually came from. It's not that hard if you just look. You know, there really wasn't a fat guy in a red suit. That was never a true thing. And you can see this in the same way. You just start looking, and yeah, you will see that vulnerability really, it is a non-issue from this perspective, as both of you have described, because there's nothing, I don't have anything to lose. And by that, I mean that literally, like there's nothing that can be lost in any interaction with anyone, anywhere, anytime. There's just nothing to lose. And so then there's nothing to guard. And man, what a relief, right? What a relief. Next question. Advice columnists are always getting, and I get these same questions, by the way. I'm not being flippant about where the questions come from. I just love that now they can be answered from a different place. So this is a question that I get a lot and that I hear about a lot, which is, how do I get over loss? And define loss however you want to. You know, typically it's about loss of a career, a person, a relationship, a place to be. And you can hear those are all aspects of, obviously, of how we define ourselves. And the way that we define ourselves means how we project a future. And so when any of those handful of things that are so dear to us seem to not do what we projected them to do, we experience loss, or what we call loss. And so that's very different from this place. And I would love for either or both of you, if you want to talk about what that has meant to you.
Well, So
With?
in September, I lost my son. Both of these wonderful women already know that, but it wasn't earth-shattering. Obviously, it was fucking hard, man, and sometimes it still is, because I revert back to my old perspective of I had a hand in keeping him alive, which in its truest form, I'm not God, so I didn't.
Yeah.
And I didn't lose anything when he left. I'm putting air quotes around left. I don't get to see his physical form anymore, and that's the only thing that I've lost, and my projected future. That future didn't exist. It wasn't real. It was something that I built up in my head, and I think that was the hardest part of losing him, was all of a sudden I didn't have that future anymore. And my brain had to kind of like recalibrate of what that meant. But everything that he was in this life is still readily accessible for me at any moment in time. And I can talk to him as much as I talk to God or consciousness or the universe, and knowing that he's a part of that system and as much a part of me as I am of him. And also, I think like blaming myself for whatever did or didn't happen, or what I did or did not do. Once I let go of the fact that I didn't have a hand in keeping him alive, and I didn't have a hand in killing him, it wasn't for me to worry about.
Right.
It didn't change the fact that his physical form is not here, and he is not gone. So
your whole experience with this has been really amazing to me, and I will say, as I have to both of you, about your son leaving is what I say, because when I say dying, everybody has their own connotations about that they've learned. And again, it's exactly like what we call the past. We just accept what we learned about the word death without looking, and it's so vague and so fearful in a childlike way. Like, we're just scared. Like Ava says, sometimes, like, she and I are looking under her bed and I drag out a box and she just starts screaming before she even sees what it is. She's just like, ah, put that back. I don't know. What is it? Yeah, that's how we are about death. And I got to tell you, one of the things about this perspective is it invites us. I'll just say it the way I say it typically to clients, because you all know me. I just say, this is an invitation to grow the fuck up, to stop just accepting that what we learned when we were 2 or 3 years old is the thing that we're going to use to be in a grown life. So yeah, I said to Mileena and to Ava at the time that her son had just left, I'm like, I have to be honest with you, I have not been working with anyone when they experience something this intense, because typically this is the story that humans have, is that is the worst possible thing that a person could have happen to them. And so I said, I don't know how this will serve you. I know it will. I don't have a timeline for that. I don't know how it will, but I know it will. And so really, Mileena and I, we just continued asking the questions and doing the practices that we had always done. And Mileena, I know this is hard to put into words, and not because it's hard to talk about, but it's just hard to say it. It's hard to say how this works with words. But why do you think you have been able to not be devastated by his leaving?
from the perspective that I was already beginning to see from, it wasn't really an option. In order for me to be devastated and to hate myself and to go back to that perspective, I would have had to turn around and face the wall again. And knowing what I know now, that's completely impossible for long periods of time.
Yeah.
It's just, it wasn't in the cards.
It's so simple, because it's gone, right?
Yeah.
And Ava, I know you Mileena, have talked a lot about all of this. And what do you want to share with people about what you saw in terms of her loss, and then also any experiences that you've had realizing what loss is from this place.
I mean, like in terms of when like Mileena was going through all of this at first, I wrote her a note and was like, I have no fear for you. And there are a lot of people, understandably, because we have the story about this is the worst thing that could ever possibly happen to somebody,
Right.
who were worried that something bad would happen to Mileena.
Mm-hmm.
And I was talking to Mileena and I was like, I have no fear for you because we see the same thing. And I know that you can't go back, because damn if I haven't tried in some of my meaner moments to myself.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not possible. So like, I'm not worried about any behavior you might be feeling or like whatever. I know you see from a clear place, even if you have to sort of put things in a new perspective or a new place after having the way that you saw your life continuing changed.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I wasn't once worried about what it would mean for Mileena, because I just don't see things that way anymore. Which sounds crazy to a lot of people, that I'm just like, oh, she'll be fine. And they're like, what?
I have people at work that say, I'm surprised that you're not more upset about it. Like, I'm kind of worried about it, like that you're not dealing with this. I was like, no, I'm just not dealing with it the way humans deal with it. Playing by human rules, motherfuckers. Y'all are crazy. I'm not doing it. That's terrible. I would end up dead.
Yeah, right. And it does look like that. I mean, when I first started living like this, from this perspective, a lot of my friends are therapists, as most of you know, and many of them have broached that topic with me early on. They were like, I think you might be in a bit of denial here. Like, I don't know what's going on. And I even had some people ask me, like, how do you know you're not just really crazy? Like, you haven't just really lost it. And my response to that was, which still makes me smile, is that could well be. Possibly I am, but I am still the happiest person you know, so I'll take it. Like, calling where I am crazy or sane doesn't mean anything to me. It's like, what I'm interested in is like, how is my life manifesting, so to speak, for myself first, and then how is it impacting others? And it has only had, as far as I am aware, and 10 years at least, only uplifting, positive impact on the people that I interact with. And so to me, that's a win-win. So call it whatever, right? And I know that you not being devastated, like, you know, like literally just like laid waste to by this, is a real puzzle to people. But man, they're going to see that it's not going to fall apart. You know, you are where you are. And just them seeing that about you has got to make them curious.
I've got a lot of questions for sure.
Yeah, and I know there was that one beautiful interaction that you had with a patient, and I don't know if you don't want to talk about that, that's, you know, it's perfectly fine. But if you would like to share that, it was a really beautiful example of how this spreads itself, we could say.
Yeah, I can give the short version of it, but
yeah.
So I work with people like me who are trying to, you know, get their lives back on track. And there was this one woman who was just having a really hard time, and she was seeing from that worthless place. Like, everything that she had said to me when I went and sat on the bathroom floor with her because she was throwing up, she was so upset, was she was worthless and she didn't deserve to get better. And she, you know, she's done all these horrible things and, you know, whatever. I couldn't help but see clear as day that she had just, I don't really know how to put words to it other than just love. Like, I can't see her any other way. And I understand why she sees herself that way. And I understand why everybody else sees themselves that way, you know, because they think they have all this evidence. But it was just this really beautiful interaction where I asked her to look for evidence that she was worthless right here, right now, sitting in the bathroom with me. And she tried looking for past evidence, and I gently reminded her that that's not what we're doing.
Right.
I was like, no, right here. Like, you're sitting with me. How are you worthless right now? Or how do you not deserve being here? And she just kind of looked at me for a second. She's like, I can't. And I was like, exactly. Because it's not true. It was just really fucking amazing. I mean, I was crying. She was crying. I was hugging on her, even though, you know, this whole COVID thing, I couldn't help not hug her. I was like, I'm sorry. I just want to hug you and just love the shit out of you.
Yes, like the lady at Walmart. So one of the kind of side effects, if you want to call it that, of beginning to see from this place is that because all of your stories about why you're not in love with you and every other person you see just start to fade away, and then like very abruptly sometimes it seems like you just have this overwhelming rush of love for the next person you look at, which could be absolutely anyone.
Some random lady walking in Walmart.
Yes. And often I've noticed too that it can be a person who is really behaving in a way that is upsetting to others and that other people are really, really mad about. That those will be the ones that first catch our kind of love attention. And like, it's so surprising and even disorienting in a way when we start experiencing other people that way, because, you know, if there was going to be a third kind of advice column question, it would be like, you know, how do I not let people impact me negatively, which kind of goes with the first two questions too. And Ava, you're smiling. You want to talk about that? Like, how do I not let this is the way it's normally phrased. How do I not let people's negative energy affect me?
Well, part of me is laughing because I read like on Reddit, there's a thread called Am I the Asshole, where people like talk about their stories and then whatever, and they get feedback and whatever, and it's all very rules that I don't play by anymore, but I love reading them just to be like, that's so fascinating that like, but like, if I answered, I never answer any of them because my answer would be like, listen, it doesn't fucking matter. This just doesn't matter. Maybe you are being a dick right now, and that's okay. Like, let's talk about why you're doing that instead of like the impact it has on other people. But I just don't. Anytime I'm worried about someone else's behavior affecting me, it's somebody that I'm making up in my head. Like, I've never, since I've been seeing this way, I think there's maybe been a handful of times where I wasn't seeing clearly, where somebody said or did something that I was like mildly annoyed by.
Right.
But not even like fly off the handle or cry a lot or whatever, where I was just like, well, this is clearly raising some flags about myself that I didn't see. They're just acting the way that they see themselves. Like, I don't, and it's all going to be fine, which is such a answer that I think people don't like, especially considering that, like, I also believe that if you die, you're going to be fine.
Right.
And people are like, no, that's the thing at the end. That's not fine.
Right.
That's going to be fine.
Can you say more? I know this is so hard to put words to, so we'll see if any come, right? But why is it because right now I'm imagining that people in all different, especially the people who work with me, they're all different stages of realizing what we're talking about here, and they might be going, how is everything going to be fine? Like, if I'm being an asshole, how's everything going to be fine? Or if people are storming the Capitol, how's everything going to be fine? Oh my God, if I die, how is everything like what? So see if any words will come to you about why that's fine.
I mean, the things that I get nervous about are because I am attaching some sort of moral or worth value to them. And once you realize that those things aren't necessarily true, like we all learn what is good and what is bad, quote unquote. But once you see it as there's no good or bad things, we're all just trying to do what we think will make us feel better most of the time, it becomes a lot harder to not only judge, but be affected by other people's behavior. And I don't know if we talked about this, but I did it sort of backwards, where I did all the really big things first. Like I did my family and my parents and whatever. And now like Kathy and I are talking about like going to the DMV. Like that's the thing I'm nervous about. I'm like, yeah, my parents are fine. Like what? And my dad spent like a significant chunk of his time in jail. And I was like, that's fine. Like, I don't care. And, you know, and talking to him, he's so worried about his behavior. And we were talking the other day and I was like, listen, the way that I feel about you, you could go commit more crime, like violent crime. And I would feel exactly the same way about you. And like, that sounds insane and would have sounded insane to me. Absolutely. But it just stops. Once you stop taking like everything kind of personally and in your head, you have a spreadsheet of times people have been nice to you and times they've been mean and what that means and your actions to other people and whatever, it just kind of stops mattering. It's kind of fine.
Yes. So could we say that we're just, that story gets made up out of our own self-definition, like what matters and what doesn't, what's wrong and what's right, what's moral, what's immoral, what's negative energy, what's positive energy, all of that is getting made up out of who you say you are.
Yeah.
And the beauty of continuing to practice looking at all of that story, however it shows up, looking at it and saying, okay, where's my evidence that that's actually true? Why am I still wanting to live that person? Because is there anything in the present moment that requires me to continue to live the person I said I was yesterday or 10 years ago or 20 years ago? You know, there's that fun thought experiment called Last Thursdayism that poses the question, can you prove that the entire universe, including you, did not just appear whole last Thursday? Is there any way to prove that that didn't happen? And if you think about that for a second, you'll very quickly realize it would be impossible, because everything that could be said would have popped into being last Thursday. So nothing not from last Thursday would be available to talk about it. It's a really fun experiment to think about for you in your own past, you know, in this moment, like what is there right here that proves I'm the person that I think I know from the past? What proves that? Why am I accepting that that's true? Also, equally fun thought experiment. Mileena, anything, you're listening intently to Ava and laughing sometimes. Anything you want to add about that?
So when you guys were talking, I thought about like self-definition glasses, where we see the world through these self-definition glasses, and the minute that we take them off and come into this perspective, nothing really means, nobody's behavior means anything other than what they're seeing about themselves because they're wearing their glasses.
Yes. Yeah, I love that. Yes.
But yeah, that's all I have to add to that. I thought it was a fun little visual.
And that, Ava, you want to talk about that in terms of the window analogy too? Like they're really both saying the same thing?
Yeah. I mean, this started from you, that you had used this analogy that everybody has this window that they see out of, and you don't really know what's in someone else's window, and they can't not see out of their window. That's what they got.
Right.
And in terms of like judging other people's behavior, like they're acting out of what they see from their window. They're not acting out of like a way to get back at you or something about you or whatever. Has nothing to do with you. It's just the way they see the world. And in terms of like a lot of sort of more political things or social things or whatever, like you can't yell at somebody about what they see out their window because it's just going to make them more scared. You can't be like, no, you don't see that, because yes, they do. So they're not going to listen to you. And when I was talking with Kathy once about like what she does, I had this thing where I was like, I feel like I did a lot of traditional stuff that was telling me like not to be scared of things in my window or how to manage things in my window or whatever. And then Kathy showed up and was like, hey, do you want to go outside instead?
I love that.
And I was like, well, nobody told me that was an option. Like, yeah, let's go.
Right. Yes, I loved when you told me that. I'm like, because I don't have words, as both of you know, I don't have words for this because I know that I personally am not even a thing. So I know I'm not responsible for doing anything, and so that's why I'm always waiting for new words to show up. But I love that as an analogy. It just is. And that feels like what happened to me. I was stuck at my window and like looking at my own reflection to enjoy how sad I was, so I could see how sad I was. And then something, that's what I mean when I say it found me. It felt like something, like this brand new notion, or maybe even inner voice. I don't know if it was just suddenly there was the possibility that I could just go outside. And I was so astonished that I had never thought of that. Like, just leave the window if you don't like the view. It really could not get more simple than that. And that's really all that we're saying here is like, if you find yourself in a place in your life where you are not at all enjoying the view out your window, I mean, consider you can just leave the window. You can even actually go outside where there are things to ask and experience that you could not possibly know about from confining yourself to that window. And unbelievable as it is, I think that we need to wrap up in a few minutes. I always say that because it's always true. I don't have much of a time awareness. If I weren't looking at the numbers, Lisa's usually the timekeeper also, so I had to grow up today and introduce everything myself and notice the time. So I think let's do this. Let's just let each one of you say whatever you want to in closing today. And tentatively, we're thinking of recording together again on the 23rd. So if folks have questions or if you guys, come up with something between now and then, certainly we will, we'll do that next time. But for today, let me feel what might be helpful. Well, you say whatever you think might be helpful. But also, if somebody is listening who either has just started working with me or who doesn't work with me at all, what would you guys say to them about why bother to do this? Like, if you're new, why keep going? If you have never done this, like, why should you? What's in it for anyone, I guess we could say. Mileena, you want to go first?
I mean, this is the path to what we identify with as freedom in ourselves. There is no risk and a huge reward. Mm-hmm. You're not going to lose anything in this process that is not worth losing. And it's fucking easy, man. Like there's not, you don't have to go through like the 12 trials of hell or anything to get to this point. It just kind of melts away once you start looking at it.
And would you say that that's possible for anyone?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Regardless of, any kind of background that you come from, regardless of your current state of sobriety or lack thereof, or your mental health state, or really anything. There's nothing that prevents anyone from seeing from right here and working towards a more clear perspective of the world and themselves.
That was beautifully said.
Thanks.
So clear, so simple. Yes, thank you. Ava.
Well, I was going to say that in terms of, why you should do any of this if you want to, I really didn't feel like I had a choice. Like Kathy and I have joked about this, that the second that this perspective made itself known to me, like we were going, and I could kick and scream if I wanted to. And sometimes I wanted to because I was scared to let something go. But as you talked about in the beginning, like as someone who was sort of dissatisfied and was always looking for something I couldn't seem to find, I found it. So that was the answer. And like the most painful part of it is just looking at the way that you see, it's looking at pain that you're already living with. There is no magic pain. There's no added pain. Kathy's not out here to like twist your arm or like make you believe stuff or whatever. Kathy's just pointing at something and going, hey, do you want to look at that? And sometimes you're like, absolutely the fuck not. I do not.
True.
But yeah, there was no other option for me. And I don't mean that in like a bad way or a good way. That was it.
Beautiful. Yes. So I will just say in closing this time that we are so free always, that we are free to choose to stay in our old story. Like, let that be your first piece of evidence that you have all the power you need to have the life that you have, because you are actually the one who is making the life you're living right now. That's how much power you have. And that story that you're living is creating the way you experience yourself, life, the world. And it's yours. You're the only one telling it. So you have all the power to keep it if you want to, or you can start looking at it one tiny piece at a time and just asking, is this something I want to keep? Is it even real? Is it true? And know that when you find yourself in that place that Ava just described of like, absolutely the fuck not, no, I do not, thank you very much. Sometimes that's how it feels when we get really close to something that we thought was ourselves, like not just a story or a thought that we had about us, but it feels like that it is us. And so that is a very understandable reaction when we get close to those things. And you can help yourself by remembering that should you choose to plant your feet there and defend that as who you are, you're free to do that. But that means that it won't change. Like what you're experiencing from that will not change. That's how free and powerful you are. Nothing's going to overwhelm your story and your perspective and take it from you. The power that you have is evidenced by the life that you're living. Notice it matches your story exactly. The story of who you are matches exactly the life experience that you're having. So I invite you, if you're ready, to just start taking a little peek at that if you haven't. And if you have started down this so-called path with me or in some other way, that's still true. Every moment you can keep the story you're telling. Notice that it is making the experience that you're having. And when something changes, so does your experience. That's Ava's dog, Pascal, is voicing his opinion about all of this.
He's in support. He's for it.
He's for it. He's totally in support. So as Lisa always says at the end, all joy all the time, because why settle for less? Let that be your encouragement today. Love you all so much, and that includes everyone suffering over the events of this week, whether you are a participant or not a participant. So let's let's just love and see what happens.